Clouds, thick and bruised, hung low over the Pride Lands, heavy and restless, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath in anticipation. I stood on the edge of Pride Rock. Thief. It wasn't the familiar scent of a predator on the breeze, but a disturbance that felt ancient, deliberate, and unsettling. Beside me, my father Mufasa lifted his great head. "This storm is not natural," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that settled deep in my bones. "The land is being tested." Jitters. As he spoke, a jagged fork of lightning split the sky, striking somewhere far beyond the horizon. The ground beneath our paws trembled, a shockwave that sent a flock of birds scattering into the chaotic air. Then, from the very heart of the storm, came a low, guttural sound that didn't belong to any creature I knew or was alien to the Pride Lands, a sound of something vast and unknown. My muscles tensed, every instinct screaming. "Whatever that is," I said, my voice tight, "it's coming closer." Without warning, the wind erupted into a violent surge. Trees bent to their breaking point, and a wall of dust and grit filled the air, completely erasing the horizon. Then, sheets of rain, cold and hard, began to fall. Out of this swirling chaos, shadowed shapes began to emerge. They were massive, horned beasts, their eyes wide with a madness driven by the storm. They were stampeding, fleeing blindly, their path aimed directly at the heart of our kingdom. "They'll trample everything in their path," I said, a wave of dread washing over me. Mufasa stepped forward, his resolve unwavering. "Then we stopped them, together." We moved, father and son descending from the safety of Pride Rock, straight into the roaring wind and driving rain. It soaked our fur in seconds, chilling us to the bone. The first of the beasts charged out of the mist, its eyes wild with terror. My father roared a sound of pure, commanding power that shook the very air, was enough to break the beast's blind charge, forcing it to veer away. I followed his lead, my own roar joining his, herding the other panicked creatures away from the dens and towards safer, open ground. But the storm only intensified. It felt alive, malevolent. Lightning struck again. Stev's time, much closer, shattering a rock outcropping and sending a deafening crack across the plains. A shockwave rippled through the earth, and the ground itself split open beneath our paws. I lost my footing, slipping on the wet stone. For a heart-stopping moment, I was sliding toward a widening crack in the ground, a dark fissure opening up to swallow me. Before, Mufasa lunged. He gripped me by the scruff of my neck, his strength immense as he hauled me back onto solid ground. The force of his pull was staggering. "Stay focused," he shouted, his voice a powerful command over the howl of the storm. I scrambled to my paws, my heart hammering against my ribs, and nodded. This was no ordinary battle against poachers or rival prides. This was a fight for survival against the land itself. And as the wind howled and the rain fell harder, I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that this storm was only just beginning. The real test was yet to come. What was this power that could command the sky and the earth? And how could we possibly stand against it? We had to find a way. The fate of the Pride Lands depended on it. We'll continue this story soon, so make sure you're subscribed to see what happens next. Thanks for watching. 2. The rain fell harder, pounding the earth like 1,000 drums of war. The air grew thick with a primal fear, a scent that clung to every drop of water. The herds weren't just running, they were fleeing. Something was hunting them. Something far worse than hunger or a predator's teeth. Simba felt it in the vibrations of the ground, a deep, unsettling thrum that resonated in his bones. This wasn't a natural storm. It was a weapon. The flash of lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the horizon for a split second. And there it was, a towering shadow, its form a chaotic dance of darkness and rain. It stood at the edge of the storm, a silhouette against the shit, shifting and writhing like smoke, trying to break free from an invisible cage. Its very presence warped the air, twisting the wind into a howling vortex of despair. The storm itself seemed to abate, its fury intensifying with every flicker of the shadow's form. Mufasa stood beside Simba, his mane soaked and heavy, his golden eyes fixed on the distant horror. His expression was one he had never seen before, not anger, not fear, but a profound gravity, as if he were looking at the end of all things. "That," he said, his voice a low rumble, barely audible over the gale, "is a storm warden. A force born when the very balance of the land is broken." As if hearing its name, the shadow moved. It didn't walk or run. It simply flowed across the landscape. The ground beneath it buckled in response. New fissures cracked open, vomiting steam and mud. The storm shrieked, a symphony of destruction, answering its master's call. A protective growl tore from Simba's throat, a defiant challenge to the unnatural darkness. "Then we fight it," he declared, his young muscles tense and ready. Mufasa turned his head, a slight, almost imperceptible shake. "No, my son. We endure it." He looked back at the terrified animals scrambling for safety. Forces like this, they feed on destruction. To fight it is to give it what it wants. Our duty is not to chase the storm, but to protect life from its path. His words settled over Simba, extinguishing the fire of his rage and replacing it with a heavy sense of responsibility. He understood. This wasn't a battle to be won with claws and teeth. It was a test of strength, of will, of leadership. Together, father and son plunged back into the chaos, their roars cutting through the wind, not as threats, but as beacons of hope. They guided the stragglers, the weak, the lost, pushing them relentlessly toward the safety of higher ground. Simba pushed himself harder than he ever had before. The burning in his lungs, the ache in his legs, he ignored it all. Exhaustion was a luxury he couldn't afford. Fear was a poison he refused to drink. Every time a wave of doubt washed over him, he would feel his father's presence beside him, a steady, unyielding mountain against the tempest. Mufasa didn't falter. He didn't tire. Holiday. He was the anchor of the Pride Lands, and Simba drew strength from his unwavering resolve. They were nearing a rocky outcrop, a small haven above the rising floodwaters, when a sudden spupt, violent blast of wind hit Simba like a physical blow. It was a malevolent, targeted force that ripped him from his feet. He lost his purchase on the slick mud and went sliding, helpless, toward the churning maw of a newly formed ravine. The water below was a brown, raging torrent, filled with debris and the fury of the storm. Simba! Mufasa's roar was pure thunder, a sound of absolute terror and love. He didn't hesitate. Slew! In a single, desperate leap, he launched himself through the air, landing hard on the crumbling edge beside his son. His claws tore into the soaked earth, searching for any hold, any purchase in the collapsing ground. The current was a living thing, grabbing at Simba's legs, its pull insistent and terrifyingly strong. For a heart-stopping moment, Simba felt himself being dragged into the abyss. It felt impossible. The storm was winning. But then, spurred by his father's desperate struggle, he found his footing. Digging his own claws deep, he fought back against the pull. He felt Mufasa's strength surge through him, a shared power against the indifferent chaos. Together, they heaved, they pulled, they fought their way back from the brink. They collapsed onto solid ground, gasping for air, as the very spot where they had been standing crumbled and was swallowed by the ravine. Breathing hard, his body trembling with adrenaline and exertion, Simba looked at his father. Mufasa was panting, his powerful form shuddering, but his eyes held Simba's gaze. And through the rain, through the fear, a powerful light shone from them. Pride. It was a look that said more than words ever could. "I won't leave your side," Simba rasped, his voice raw but firm. Mufasa nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. "Good," he rumbled, his voice regaining its kingly strength. He looked back, toward the horizon, where the storm continued its rampage. "Because the storm isn't done with us yet." And as he spoke, the shadow at the heart of the tempest moved again, its vast, dark form flowing ever closer. The true test was just beginning. Thank you for watching this chapter of our story. If you're captivated by the fate of the Pride Lands, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. We've got so much more to explore. See you in the next video. The storm warden let out a sound that shook the sky, not a roar, but a pressure that crushed the air itself. It was a suffocating weight, a silent scream that made the world tremble. Trees, ancient and strong, snapped like twigs. Boulders rolled down the hillsides as if pushed by an invisible hand. The rain, which had been falling straight down, now lashed sideways, driven by a furious, unnatural wind. Simba felt the weight of it press into his chest, a physical force that brought with it a tide of old fears and doubts. Memories of past failures, moments of weakness, all surged up, threatening to drown him. For a single, terrifying heartbeat, he faltered. His legs felt heavy, his resolve crumbling under the immense pressure. As the darkness threatened to consume him, a powerful figure stepped in front of him, a shield against the storm's fury. It was Mufasa. "Look at me!" Mufasa's voice was a firm, grounding anchor in the chaos. Simba, his heart pounding, lifted his head and locked eyes with his father. Mufasa's gaze was not one of pity, but of unwavering belief. "You are not the cub you once were," he continued, his voice rising above the gale. "You are the strength that stands even when the storm demands you fall. You are the king." The words struck Simba with the force of a lightning bolt, chasing away the shadows in his mind. The fear didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled him. It was fuel now. The shadow of the storm warden surged forward, a mass of swirling darkness and malevolent energy. Purple lightning danced along its edges, crackling with raw power. Mufasa didn't wait. He roared, not a challenge born of aggression, but a powerful roar of defiance. It was a declaration that they would not be broken. Sound was a golden blade that cut through the oppressive silence of the storm, sharp and clear. Inspired, Simba joined him. He opened his mouth and let out a roar that came from the very core of his being. Their voices merged, a harmony of courage and strength that echoed across the plains, pushing back against the wind and the rain. The wind, which had been a relentless force, suddenly shifted. The storm warden, this embodiment of despair, hesitated. Its shadowy form flickered, its edges wavering as if uncertain for the first time. It was a small change, but it was enough. Hope ignited in Simba's chest like a wildfire. They advanced together, father and son, two kings moving as one. Each step was a monumental struggle against the howling wind that tore at their fur and tried to push them back. The mud and water sucked at their paws, trying to drag them down. But they did not stop. They did not falter. Mufasa, with a mighty grunt, struck the ground with his full weight. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the earth, a tremor of pure power that momentarily disrupted the storm's rhythm. The water on the ground jumped, and the air vibrated. Simba followed his father's lead instantly. He channeled every lesson Mufasa had ever taught him. Every instinct honed by the wild, every single ounce of courage he possessed. He slammed his own paws down adding his strength to his father's, their combined force creating a resounding boom that answered the thunder above. The storm howled in protest, enraged. A bolt of jagged lightning, blindingly bright, struck the ground directly between them and the shadow, carving a sizzling scar into the earth. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burnt grass, but instead of retreating, instead of flinching from the raw display of power, Simba did the unexpected. He saw not a barrier, but an opening. With a surge of adrenaline, he leaped. He launched himself through the lingering flash of light, a golden blur against the purple and black. He landed hard on the other side, his paws digging into the soaked ground, and he roared straight into the heart of the storm. It was a roar of pure, unadulterated defiance, a direct confrontation with the fear that had tried to paralyze him. The Storm Warden, the great and terrible shadow, recoiled. It shrank back as if struck by a physical blow. The impossible had happened. A king had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had blinked. The change was immediate and dramatic. The relentless, punishing rain began to soften, its angry hiss turning into a gentle patter. The wind, which had been a screaming banshee, weakened its grip, its howl diminishing to a mournful whisper. And slowly, piece by piece, the shadow unraveled. The consecrated darkness began to dissipate, its form dissolving back into mist and rolling thunder. The suffocating pressure lifted from the air. The lightning faded, the flashes growing less frequent, less intense, until they were gone. Soon, nothing remained of the monstrous entity but the falling rain and a profound, ringing silence that settled over the Pride lands. The storm was over. Standing side by side, soaked and exhausted but unbroken, the two kings watched the last of the darkness fade away, their shared breath misting in the cool, clean air. The storm faded as suddenly as it had come. The world held its breath, suspended in the quiet aftermath. Clouds that had moments ago been a swirling, angry mass began to thin, parting like a heavy curtain. And then, light. It wasn't the harsh glare of a full sun, but a gentle, golden light that broke through, touching the soaked Pride lands with a soft, ethereal glow. Sluice. Every leaf, every blade of grass glistened, newly washed and shimmering. Simba stood beside Mufasa, his young body aching with exhaustion. He was bruised, his fur matted with rain and dirt, but he was standing. That was what mattered. He was standing tall next to his father. Meerkats peeked out from their burrows, their dark eyes wide. Zebras emerged from the shelter of acacia groves, shaking their manes and stamping their hooves. Giraffes, who had weathered the storm like tall, silent ships, lowered their heads to nuzzle their young to land. Though scarred by the wind and rain, still breathed. It still lived. It was a testament to resilience, a quiet promise of continuity. Simba looked up at his father, his voice barely a whisper against the vast silence. We survived. Together. Mufasa turned his great head, and a soft smile touched his lips, crinkling the corners of his eyes. That, he said, his voice a low, comforting rumble, is the lesson storms exist to teach. Not just survived, but endured. They had faced the darkness and found the strength to wait for the light. a quiet, unshakable knowledge that settled deep in his bones. Their shadows stretching long and connected in the golden light. No storm, no shadow, no matter how menacing, no force of nature, no matter how powerful, could ever break the bond of kings who refused to fall. It was a legacy of courage, a promise passed from father to son, a strength that wasn't just in muscle, but in spirit. And somewhere beyond the horizon, in the heart of the land itself, that lesson was remembered. It settled into the soil, was carried on the wind, and was reflected in the patient, watchful eyes of the mountains. The land remembered the strength of its kings, the unity of its people, and the unbreakable spirit that had seen them through the darkest of times. It held that memory close, waiting for the day it would be needed again. Because storms always return, in one form or another. But so does the strength to face them. So does the light that follows. This story, the tale of a storm and the kings who faced it, is more than just a legend of the Pride Lands. It's a mirror reflecting our own lives. We all face storms. They come in many forms: personal struggles, unexpected crises, moments of doubt that threaten to overwhelm us. They can leave us feeling bruised, exhausted, and lost in the dark. Think about the storms in your own life. The times you felt the wind and rain were too much to bear. How did you get through? Who stood beside you? Mufasa's words resonate so deeply because they hold a universal truth. That is the lesson storms exist to teach. Storms aren't just about destruction, they are about revelation. Like Simba, we often feel we have to be strong on our own. But true strength, the kind that endures, is rarely a solo act. It's found in the hand that reaches for yours in the dark. The silent presence of someone who simply stands with you until the clouds part. It's in the together, men. We face challenges as a community, as a family, as partners. We are not just adding our strengths together, we are multiplying them. The bond between Simba and Mufasa is the heart of this story. It's a bond forged not in quiet, sunny days, but in the heart of the tempest. Their shared experience created something unbreakable. It's a powerful reminder to cherish the people who weather our storms with us. They are our anchors, our lighthouses. They are the ones who help us find our way back to the light. Each one tells a story of survival, of resilience, of a lesson learned. They become part of our landscape, a testament to the fact that we were tested and we endured. It has the confidence that comes from knowing you've faced the worst and are still standing. It's a quiet power that informs every step you take afterward. You walk taller, not with arrogance, but with the calm assurance that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. So, the next time the clouds gather on your horizon, remember the two kings on the plains? Remember that storms are not just there to test you, but to teach you. They teach you about your own strength, and they teach you about the incredible power of standing together. Don't be afraid of the rain. Look for the person who will stand in it with you. Know that after every storm, there is a golden light waiting to break through, revealing a world that is washed clean, renewed, and ready for a new day. The greatest lessons are not learned in the calm, but in the heart of the storm. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the deeper meanings in the tales we love. Let us know in the comments about a storm you weathered and the lessons it taught you. We'll see you in the next video.